Virgin. Beauty. Bitch. Podcast. Inspiring women to overcome social stereotypes and share unique life experiences without fear of being defiantly different. Your hosts, Christopher and Heather. Let's talk, shall we?
Who or what is your bitch? We all have them. Things in life that annoy, irritate, or we just hate. Those things become our personal bitch. For me, winter is a bitch. For some, it's the most glorious season of all. I see the same thing when we use the word bitch, and it's used to punish and demoralize women. Yet we talk with women who take bitch as a compliment or confirmation that they are living life by their own standards, boundaries, and values. So my question to women is, what side of the fence do you live on? What do you hear when someone calls you bitch with hate in their eyes? And how do women make the leap from hearing an insult to accepting a compliment? That's at the heart of our conversation today with poet Jamie Louise Madigan. Welcome back, Jamie, to Virgin Beauty Bitch.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be back.
Love to have you. Now, Jamie, you and I had a heartfelt conversation a few weeks ago around our theme of the elimination of violence against women, which is something you had to overcome in your personal life. And your healing inspired a book of poems, Lipstick Stains and Coffee Cups, which I mentioned is literally boiling over with passion, pain, and self-discovery. One critical part of that self-discovery was acknowledging a part of yourself that you once believed was best to avoid, the bitch. But before we meet her, who was Jamie before you made that self-discovery?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think I definitely delved into wanting to always be nice. Like I feel like wanting to be nice and kind and accommodating and almost like a people pleaser. That was sort of what I was taught. I also was like raised very religious, and so I feel like in the religious upbringing you're kind of taught to sort of have good morals, treat people with respect. But I find that like I didn't have necessarily the boundaries to put in place, where I eventually kind of became more of like a doormat. And that's when I would sort of almost like fantasize about being this like crazy bitch, or like wishing that I could be more like empowered, or wishing I could be more stronger, or like, yeah, just like very different. Like it almost was like a personality. Like I saw my kindness as like a personality flaw.
And I think when we spoke last time, I asked you to read one of your poems, and it was sort of the critical point of making that discovery and changing your attitude towards bitch. Do you have that poem there still?
I do, yeah, if you'd like me to read it.
Yeah, that'd be great, because Heather did not hear that the first time around either. So let's go with it.
Sure, yeah, we can dissect it. So it's from my book Lipstick Stains and Coffee Cups, and the title of the poem is called Highest Room, Tallest Tower. So it goes, I've always been told you are such a sweetheart. You are a good person. You are so nice. I smile and say thank you, taking it as a compliment, as if they don't know I have full capacity to reverse their words and morph into the monster every man dreams about. Instead, I lock her in the highest room, in the tallest tower, starve her, drown her in kindness. I refuse to be the woman who torments those I care about, because we've been taught being a nasty bitch has higher sex appeal.
Still goosebumps.
Thank you.
So Heather, what do you hear in that?
Yeah. Oof. It gives me goosebumps too. I mean, what I hear is a piece of ourselves that isn't, brought down from the tower or given like her time in the sun, so to speak, in order to grow and thrive and understand who she is, or what that element of yourself means for your overall personhood. And I think what you wrote there is so true for so many women, that there's this piece of them that doesn't want to be a doormat, but has been so programmed over time to be accommodating, to smooth the feathers, to make people work together, to be collaborative, that we're consistently reminded, whether through social cues or through relationship cues, that upholds our value, is to be able to bring that to the table. But I think the trade-off for that is exactly as what you've said, that you end up feeling like people can walk all over you. And I think that's true for so many women, and not just women, but since that's the point of our conversation here today. So, it kind of makes me think, like, what does that bitch in the tower, what does she want? What does it look like for her to actually get the attention she deserves for her own sake, and then maybe even for her sexual prowess, because there's a power to understanding your own sexuality and your wants and needs there. So I guess my question to you is, what do you think that piece of you locked in a tower at the time of that poem, what would she want instead?
I think that's a really good question. I think I wanted to just be more vocal. I feel like a lot of the time, like, I guess I could use the metaphor of like Ariel without her voice, like Little Mermaid. I feel like I was always speaking, and I was always sort of like saying the right things, and like you were saying, like going along kind of just to be accommodating, but I wasn't actually like telling the truth of how I felt. And so I feel like my like inner bitch would be like, just say exactly how you feel and like not be worried about the consequence. Because I think I was catering to people's, not necessarily catering, but I was sort of just living, waiting for their judgment, I guess. Like, I think I was very insecure at the time, where I was so cautious about like what people thought of me, or if I said something that maybe would have been wrong, then it would have like set them off or would have made them think differently of me. And over the years, I've learned that like, if you just say exactly how you feel, then the people who are meant to be in your life, like, they will stay, and the people that have a problem with it, then they'll say it, but then that could even open up like a bigger conversation. Like, I feel like you can never really say the wrong thing to the right person, is what I've learned. And that's just been a very good conversation piece. So I think at that time, yeah, I was just really kind of missing like my voice and really missing like who I truly was internally, but I wasn't presenting that externally.
The problem seems to me that no one conditions you, or no one teaches you that side of yourself is actually authentic.
Yeah.
You grow up believing that the good girl is authentic, and there are rewards for that. Mm-hmm. What were the rewards for being the good girl and not being the other?
I think it's being well liked, I guess, or like well tolerated. I think maybe I liked the validation of knowing that like I was seen as a respectable, nice, pleasant person to be around. I think if you sort of tap into that like bitch persona that we're saying, I saw that as being, oh, now I'm being difficult. Now I'm poking the bee's nest. Now I'm like creating bumps in the road. And I think I was just I always wanted to make things smooth sailing, even if it came at the cost of me shoving down like who I truly was, which is just such a backwards way to think. But over the years, I've really learned that like you should just say exactly how you feel and then deal with it.
I found also, and I think that this is kind of almost like the pitfall of the good girl, is that when the good girl is always accommodating and making sure that everybody else's experience has the least amount of bumps as possible, what I've noticed is that then people get even more and more demanding of you. So it's like the smallest thing that you're putting forward to kind of stand for what you need in a circumstance, or say what you need to say, because they're not used to you asking for your own accommodations, it feels exponentially larger. And I think, over time, people then start to readjust to the fact that as you're saying, you've gone through this big transition, and the people who are meant to be in your life stay, and recognize that you putting forward your true authentic self matters to you, but then ultimately matters to them about as somebody who cares about you. But I definitely noticed that there's the work is never done, and you're never accommodating enough if if you keep going down that path.
Yeah, I noticed it. I noticed it kind of creates like challenges for you later, because once you make that first step of like the first time that you like call someone out on their behavior, how they're treating you, or the first time that you finally set a boundary in place and you're like, hey, I'm actually not okay with this, say like in an interpersonal relationship, I find that trickles into every other aspect of your life, where it's not contained. Like, I think I had this misconception in my head where I'm like, okay, well, I can just maybe be kind of more of a bitch just in this category, and then the rest of my life I'll still be kind of nice and accommodating. But I'm like, it doesn't work that way. And it's kind of this nice feeling of like you're finally opening up and like kind of spreading your wings, because I could be something direct in a relationship, and then it would be a couple months later down the road something would happen in work or something, and I feel like I'd be taken advantage of in a work scenario, and I'd be like, wait a minute, like I know my value. I know that I should stand up for this. Like, I was able to do this here, so now I should be able to do this in this scenario. And it sort of just like follows the trajectory. So it's been very interesting to see how you're able to like open yourself up in all different categories. And like you said, to your point, like, yeah, it's never over. Like, I think life will always throw you curveballs and will always test you and always kind of like keep you in line and be like, hey, are you going to stick to what you have like rose to the occasion of, or are you going to fall back into your old patterns? And every single move that happens in life will kind of test you on that.
An important word in relationships, every relationship, is respect. And in order for in order for men to earn respect, you have to break the rules of being nice. But you have to first respect yourself in order to then break the rules outside of yourself. You have to let free something that you've been told your whole life is not respected. Mm-hmm. You have to let that out and then exercise it in your life in general. That is a big discovery, right? Like you said, you can't contain it, because once you let it out, it doesn't just stay in the bedroom, or it doesn't just stay in the kitchen, or it doesn't just stay in your home. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, it's kind of like flexing a muscle. It's kind of like working out a muscle. Because each time, like you're saying, you're going to get a little more comfortable with it. And it's like, okay, this actually either made me feel really seen for what I actually am, or it felt true to myself, which helps build a sense of self-worth that you respect. Mm. And I agree that it continues to keep going into other elements of life.
Yeah, and I feel you're also like not like that, flexing that muscle is sort of realizing that you're no longer operating out of a place of fear. I feel like I was very like fear ridden and very like scared of the outcome, or scared of what people thought. And I felt very, very small in that way. And then once I started kind of learning that I could open up and be vocal and express myself, and even through my poetry, like just say like, this is exactly how I felt, this is who I am, I'm authentically sharing every single detail, it sort of just like takes that veil off of like, I'm not operating from a place of fear, I'm operating from a place of courage, and I'm able to like change the direction of this. And so not being fear-based is so refreshing that I'm not like hanging on like I'm on a roller coaster ride like with clenched knuckles, I can just relax. Excuse the metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, because I think that is something that a lot of women feel, is this, and I believe some of that is from a survival standpoint, and the consequence of standing your ground as being an aspect historically that either a connection to your life or your livelihood could have been at stake in expressing what you needed or how you really feel. But there's a psychological, emotional societal context of it as well, with real ramifications. So for you, like, what kind of helped push you through seeing that even if there are consequences in how people perceive you, like, what helped you to kind of dissipate that mattered so much, the consequence?
I think you're just weighing the consequence against your own internal like compass, like I think the word consequence, I guess, would be you seem to have like it always comes with like a negative connotation. And me, myself, I think it's just becoming aware of how I can be my own worst enemy, and I can like over dramatize a situation, or overthink, or overanalyze, or make something actually worse than it is, when the truth is like the consequence of me standing up for something would be potentially the loss of somebody else. It would mean that I may be losing someone, but that person, like, maybe they were meant to be lost anyways. So I think it's just grappling with the fact that like I can stand up and maybe I will lose someone, or maybe I will create a feeling in somebody else that they're not comfortable with, but it's not my responsibility to make them comfortable. Like, it's my responsibility to tell the truth. So
I think that's the biggest switch, is what you just said right there, right? Is the turning around of putting your values first,
yeah,
as opposed to others, and that makes that makes all the difference in the world, right? So this word now, it does not mean the same as it used to in your life. Bitch.
Yeah, it doesn't. It used to be, even in the book, like I used to be very, I wouldn't necessarily say like, I think it was more like a jealousy thing. I think there was this other woman who my boyfriend at the time was kind of pursuing and interested in. And I think I painted her as this like terrible woman, because obviously I was 18 and heartbroken and angsty, and I wasn't able to regulate my emotions effectively as I'm able to now. But yeah, it stemmed from a lot of jealousy, it stemmed from a lot of insecurity, and I was kind of angry at this woman. But it was almost like, looking back on it now, it's almost like I kind of wanted to be her. Like I wanted to have that like stern like conviction, and being able to like speak clearly and like stand for what I want, and just be able to say exactly how I felt, and be strong and empowered. And so even though it came off as like hatred and anger, I think there was a lot of like yearning for like wanting to be that way as well. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword in a way.
So do you feel now that you've taken the bitch out of the tower, and where is she now?
Where is she now? That's great. What shenanigans is she up to now?
Yes.
I wouldn't necessarily say that she's like rampaging through the town, with like fire on her tail. Like, I would say that I've become very more just like centered in who I am. I feel like, I'm no longer for people to accept me, I guess. Like I've just become clear. I'm like, this is who I am. This is who I want. Like, if you don't see value in that, like, that's your loss, because I'm a delight. Like, and it's like, you can be strong and like empowered in your own way without being like aggressive. But even if the way that you're expressing yourself does come off aggressively, then like that's okay too. Like, as long as you're treating people with like a fundamental level of respect and like stating your case clearly, I don't really see why there should be any issues with saying like, hey, I have a problem with this, or like I should be treated this way, or like you shouldn't talk to me like this. Like, that's just basic, like telling someone to have basic human decency, being like, I want you to be a decent person to me, and I think we should treat each other as equals with respect. Like, I don't think I should ever feel guilty for that anymore. And before, I used to tie my expressions and like asking for that with so much shame and so much guilt and so much fear. And now it's like, no, I'm just a person who's talking to you as a person and saying like, we're having like an adult conversation. And so it doesn't need to be this big dramatic. It's just like, hey, we're both just humans, and we're trying to do our best to like find a common ground. I hope that makes sense.
No, that's great. The word bitch historically has been presented as you said, a woman rampaging through town with fire on her tail. That's how the word has been presented socially. However, it is something far more internal, far more subtle, and something that you work on in yourself. It really has nothing to do with this raging person that we have attached bitch to. It's far more personal. It's far more getting to know who you are and then expressing yourself in a way that, as you said, is just basically human right.
Yeah. And I feel too, like, even tying into what Heather had said at the beginning of the conversation, like, I find that I did tie that bitch persona as well to like the sexuality piece of thinking that I was a nice, accommodating girl, then like maybe I wasn't as desirable as like someone who was more bitchy or more like stern or strong or something like that. Like, I think it made me feel insecure of like, because I'm so nice, now I'm not seen as attractive as somebody else would be. And I would almost kind of like place that judgment of like, oh, if I was more this way, then I would be more desired. But it's like, why would I morph myself into something that I'm not, just for like the physical affection of men? Because then they'd be attracted to something that's not real, you know? So that was a big struggle in my brain of trying to really find that balance of like standing up for myself while also not going too far the other way to try and like get attention or affection in areas from people that like aren't actually attracted to the right thing or the right values.
Well, that sounds to me like when you put it in a sexual context, basically you need to be a porn star.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, like, yeah, I would say more like needing to be, yeah, like I've never felt the need to like overly sexualize myself. But then there's like that weird piece, because in society, like, you do know that like that's what, like, especially on the internet, that's kind of what gets the most views or the most attention. So then you're like, okay, well, that means that I'm going to have to work a little bit harder, and I'm going to have to focus on the fundamentals of who I am and really just drive that home instead of this over-sexualized persona as well.
Yeah. I think it's important to make the distinction between the bitch we're talking about, this self-discovery and self-expression part of ourselves, as to this image of this raging female going crazy sexually and socially and out of control. I think it's really important to make the distinction between these two things that we're talking about, using the same word.
And also too, like, even, it's not to say that like I love like women that go and they have like these like amazing like boudoir photo shoots and things like that. Like, that is so, to me, like, I almost had to reframe that and be like, oh, like, that is so empowering that they're able to do that as well. And so like to view that as like something that's empowered and that they're doing it for them, like they're not doing it like it's for their own confidence, their own self-esteem, for their own sexuality and feeling good in themselves. They're not doing it for the sake of needing like validation from anybody else as well too. So like I love that whole piece as well, where I did have to reframe it and think like, I'm not trying to be anything else other than who I am, and I can march my own path, and this is kind of how I am. And then watch other women march their own path too, and everyone's able to just be who they are innately and not feel a judgment or not feel like searching for this external validation.
I think that really hits the nail on the head of some of the hesitancy that women feel around standing their ground, because I think a huge piece of that is the validation that we so desperately seek. So, you know, the work that you've done internally in order to just know that the only way to really feel that is from how you feel about yourself, it just frees you. It frees you from all of those pinnings of wanting that from other people.
Yeah, it does feel very like liberating. It feels like there's like a weight that's kind of been like lifted off my shoulders, where I no longer feel like I'm sort of muzzled or I'm like in a cage, sort of not being able to be who I truly am. So it's been very empowering.
So who are some of your female heroines?
Ooh, well, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but definitely I would say Taylor Swift is like the one and only. She is absolutely incredible. And I find it interesting that she is so successful, but she is also one of like the most, like, people either love her or hate her. There is no gray area. She is one of the most like powerful women in the world, like self-made billionaire, being able to like make a living off of her vulnerability, because she writes all her own songs, and she displays herself in such a way that is so like raw and real. And a lot of people seem to have a problem with that. Like, they're threatened by that she's been able to build this complete empire off of her own like blood, sweat, and tears. And that's like a problem for some people. And I just find it so inspirational to be like, someone is out here doing like a 3.5-hour show with vocals like off the chain, like being so kind as well too. Like, she stands up for what she wants, but she also is so kind to her team. Like, she gave all of her truck drivers like bonuses. She's so kind to her dancers, to her crew, and like you can see that she is well respected, but also like not to be fucked with, you know what I mean? And so I think she is the epitome of like this like bitch that we're talking about, you know? And like I think that is just so inspirational, and it teaches like young women that like, yes, you can chase your dreams, and you can also be kind to people along the way, but also like stand your ground and say like, no, I don't want to be treated like this as well. So it's a really good balance of like all the things that we had just discussed. And so I think she's just absolutely incredible.
Love it.
I love it too. I love it so much because it's like, I think when people initially look at Taylor Swift, they see somebody like you've said who has gone through quite an evolution herself of the eras. And even her, is it Americana?
Miss Americana documentary, yeah.
Yeah, where she starts to really notice the ways that she's been muzzled by the music industry, by, I guess, also ultimately perceptions of her, and how she worked through her own freeing to show up authentically. And look how exponentially she's grown after doing so. So it's or that's a person that means a lot to you. And I think that's true for so many.
Yeah, it is.
Is that why not? It's resonating around the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's because it gives people like something to believe in, like especially even just going to the Eras tour, like it just like evokes emotions. Like, you've watched someone and you've been with someone through their whole like journey and trajectory of life. So like all of her musical eras, like she was there with me when I was having like my first heartbreak, and she was there with me when I was like falling in love, and there with me when I was going through issues with friends or issues with family. And like there's a song for every single one of those emotions. And I feel like if you're able to tie emotions to a part of your life, then you're kind of like connected in that way. And so being in a stadium full of like screaming fans from all ages, like body types, like cultures, like everyone's there together for the same reason, you know what I mean? Like everyone's like, hey, we have this one like invisible string that like ties us all together, and we're all like united. And so that, I think, is why it was such a powerful tour, is because it was more than just the music. It was like the principle of we are all like connected, and we are all like the same in this way. So I thought that was just really powerful, and it just like brought me to tears. Yeah.
How is that going to inspire your art?
It made me realize that I need to like step it up. Like after going to that concert, I was like, I gotta step it up. Like I gotta be more, I need to peel back the layers even more, because I find in my first book, I was very open and very vulnerable because I never actually expected a set of eyes to see it. It was almost like a letter to my abusive ex-boyfriend. Like it was a letter to him, essentially, of like all of these poems of things that I never said at the time, or was too afraid to say, or like only said after the fact. And now I'm working on my second book, and I'm realizing that I'm almost filtering myself kind of, because I expect readers now. And so I'm like, okay, I need to like make it approachable to the readers. And then I'm having this internal battle of like, no, like you should just write as if no one's reading it, and then publish it like that. So I'm having to go through, and I'm really having to like tear back a lot of the layers and find like kind of the root of it, because I think it's easy to fall back into the pattern of like sugar coating it or making it more palatable, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Well, I look forward to reading the raw you and the roots. So I think that's a beautiful experience, and that tension, internal tension is part of the beauty of art itself. So that's fantastic.
So the gifting season is upon us, and we want people to buy your first book. So let them have it. Let them know where to get it.
Let them have it. Yeah. Just my inner butch is going to let them have it. There we go. She's coming down from the tower with her baseball bat. Yeah. So it is called Lipstick Stains and Coffee Cups. I live in Calgary, so it is available at all of the Calgary Indigo locations, so you can get it on the shelves there. It is available at a couple of the local bookstores as well, and the main funnel that I'm using for my book is you can buy it directly from my website. So it's JamieLouiseMadigan.com, and I have a Shopify page set up there, and you can just buy it online and I can ship it to you. And in the new year, I'm hoping to get it on Amazon ebook and then also audiobook, so that it'll be available on all of those funnels as well. So yeah, lots of work for me to do, but it's good. It keeps me focused and keeps me on my toes and excited for the future. So yeah.
Well, Jamie, we really appreciate you. The word bitch has been a spiteful word that has really crippled women for centuries. And it's important that we talk about it, and it's important that we diffuse it. And it's important that we allow women to own it on their own terms, as you have done. And we really appreciate your expression of how that has happened in you, because it can really influence so many others who are struggling with this word and struggling within to let that other person out into the world. So we appreciate you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It was great to be back and really dive into it. Like, I think it's just such an interesting topic, and I really love what you both are doing just to kind of bring awareness to like how there's so many different definitions of the word. So appreciate it.
Such a pleasure to have you, and thank you for reading one of your poems. We'll look forward to seeing your next book. And yeah, thanks for your insights today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. Happy to be here.
And you have been listening to
The Virgin,
the Beauty,
and the Bitch series.
Absolutely. Come on back. We'll continue this conversation, and we would love to have you bring your friends.